Enjoy a narrated virtual tour of torpedo bombers, dive bombers, and anti-submarine warfare aircraft exhibited at the National Museum of Naval Aviation. Some of the photos and videos on this tour are of the same model aircraft but were captured at other museums. The museum is free to visit and located on Naval Air Station Pensacola in Florida. When delivered to the fleet in October 1932, the Curtiss-Wright F11C2 Goshawk boasted two .30 caliber machine guns which provided it air-to-air capability. It could also carry either a 500-pound bomb beneath the fuselage or a quartet of 112-pound bombs underneath the wing. The latter provided an air-to-ground capability that made the Goshawk the Navy's first true fighter bomber. The F11C2 was redesignated the BFC-2, the new designation noting both the bombing and fighting missions. By the time it was redesignated BFC-2, Fighting Squadron 1B, known as the High Hats, had been flying the airplane for a year. The displayed Goshawk was restored over a 3-year period and is displayed in the markings of Bureau No. 9332, which flew with the High Hats from the aircraft carrier Saratoga. The December 1937 delivery of Vought Sikorsky's SB-2U was an important technological step for naval aircraft. That was the service's first monoplane scout bomber, and its speed eclipsed its predecessor by 45 miles per hour. By the beginning of World War II, the Vindicator suffered from the inherent flaw of being the ultimate development of the trussed fuselage and fabric concept, prompting their replacement by newer designs which incorporated metal stressed skin construction techniques. The Vindicator's sole combat came in June 1942 at the Battle of Midway. Of the 12 Vindicators that took part in the battle, 6 were lost, and 5 were severely damaged by either enemy fire or due to exceeding the aircraft's operational limits. One of the lost aircraft was flown by Captain Richard Fleming, who pressed home his bombing run despite his aircraft being in flames. Killed in action, he received a posthumous Medal of Honor. No tactic represented U.S. naval aviation's rise to preeminence during World War II more than dive bombing, and no aircraft embodied the success of this tactic more than the Douglas SBD Dauntless. An innovative design, the aircraft incorporated perforated dive flaps which stabilized and slowed it during bombing runs of 70-plus-degree dives. The first generation of Dauntless deployed late in 1940 and early 1941, and by the time the U.S. entered World War II, 10 squadrons operated the SBD. It was the frontline Navy and Marine Corps dive bomber at the onset of the Pacific War, and served in combat throughout the war, though in decreasing numbers as it was supplanted by the SB-2C Helldiver. Navy and Marine Corps Dauntless pilots participated in many of the Pacific War's most significant battles, achieving their greatest victory at Midway, where they sank 4 Japanese carriers. Though the plane was relatively slow and lightly armed, SBD pilots and gunners shot down 138 enemy aircraft. This one-of-a-kind SBD Dauntless, Bureau No. 2106, is a survivor of the attack on Pearl Harbor and participated in dive bombing runs against Japanese carriers during the pivotal Battle of Midway, making it one of the most historic aircraft in existence. Though its introduction to combat at the Battle of Midway was disappointing, the Grumman TBF/TBM Avenger remained the Navy's standard torpedo bomber throughout the war. During the Battle of Midway, the 6 Avengers assigned to Torpedo Squadron 8 attacked the Japanese fleet but were mauled by enemy fighters. 5 were shot down, and the surviving aircraft was badly damaged with 1 crew member dead and 1 wounded. The heavily damaged Avenger provided valuable information that would be the source of improvements to its combat survivability. Increasingly effective Japanese anti-aircraft capabilities, combined with the vulnerable attack profile of a slow-flying torpedo bomber, rendered torpedo attacks rare after Midway. Later in the war, with the U.S. Navy having complete air superiority, Avengers participated in the sinking of 2 Japanese super battleships, Musashi and Yamato. Avengers claimed about 30 submarine kills, including the cargo submarine I-52. They were one of the most effective sub-killers in the Pacific theater, as well as in the Atlantic once escort carriers were available to escort Allied convoys. There, the Avengers contributed to warding off German U-boats while providing air cover for the convoys. Overweight, underpowered, and lacking maneuverability, The Brewster SB-2A Buccaneer was a classic failure. The Navy ordered a prototype of Brewster's Model 340 in April 1939, but its first flight did not occur until June 1941, though already in full production due to the sale of 750 aircraft to Britain and 162 to the Dutch. The aircraft were found to be unsatisfactory and were never used in combat, but instead became trainers, target tugs, and ground maintenance trainers. It lacked ruggedness and incurred many stress problems that made it unreliable, even as a trainer. It was relegated to lesser training roles and used to tow targets. The Marine Corps, needing an aircraft for night fighter training, took some of the Buccaneers. Some of the later Buccaneers went directly from the assembly line to the scrap heap. After World War II, the Navy issued a new requirement for a carrier-based anti-submarine warfare aircraft. The Grumman AF Guardian was designed in two versions, each tasked with a particular role. The AF-2S incorporated a wing-mounted searchlight and radar along with provisions for carrying sonobuoys and a blend of rockets, depth charges, bombs, and homing torpedoes. The AF-2W replaced the bomb bay with a large radome and APS-20 radar that bulged out from the bottom of the fuselage. Nicknamed the Scrapper and the Guppy, the two planes operated in tandem as hunter-killer teams, with the first fleet anti-submarine squadrons receiving the airplane beginning in 1950. The Guardian demonstrated poor low-speed handling characteristics. This and the fact that they routinely operated from small-deck aircraft carriers, resulted in a high accident rate that plagued the airplane. Guardian served in fleet squadrons until 1955, at which time VS-37 retired its last Guardian to accept the delivery of the S-2F Tracker, which combined the search and attack role in one airplane. Grumman's S-2F Tracker was developed in 1952 to replace hunter-killer aircraft in anti-submarine warfare operations. The tracker combined the functions of detection and attack into one airframe, and quickly established itself as the Navy's frontline carrier-based anti-submarine aircraft. The S-2F, later redesignated S-2 trackers, served in this role for over 2 decades. After the U.S. Navy retired them in 1976, a number of trackers lived on as firefighting aircraft while it continued to provide excellent service with the naval forces of other countries. The Lockheed S-3 Viking was introduced into fleet service on February 20, 1974 and was the last carrier-based fixed-wing aircraft designed for anti-submarine warfare. It was the only jet aircraft operated in the anti-submarine mission for over 30 years. With a pilot and 3 sensor operators, it was known to fleet crews as the Hoover, owing to the vacuum sound of its engines, and operated day and night from big deck carriers to track Soviet submarines during the Cold War. In addition to service in anti-submarine squadrons, the aircraft was modified to fill a variety of other roles, including aerial refueling and as a carrier on-board delivery platform. I hope you enjoyed this narrated virtual tour of the National Naval Aviation Museum's bomber aircraft. If you would like to tour other aircraft in this series, you will find convenient links in the description section below this video. Here are YouTube suggested links on a similar topic that you may enjoy viewing.